Hello from the Barista Course Hamburg. Today we have a topic that will certainly be discussed a bit controversially, and to be honest, I am already looking forward to it. We would like to look at the difference between a volumetrically controlled and a time-controlled extraction today. And in doing so, we will look closer at what influences the brew ratio and/or perhaps the extraction time in our espresso. Above all, what happens to the taste of the espresso when we extract either volumetrically or time-controlled? And depending on which brewing method you prefer, this may potentially influence you when buying an espresso machine. And more on that in a moment. Espresso is a bit like a diva. That means the more attention and love you give it, the more it will give back to you in terms of taste. And if you don't do that, then the whole thing can end up very sour or very, very bitter very quickly. And neither of those is any fun at all, of course. What does that mean specifically? If we leave the extraction temperature aside for a moment, our espresso recipe essentially consists of the brew ratio, which means how many grams go into the portafilter and how many grams end up in our cup after a certain time. And on the other hand, the extraction time, that means how long hot water flows through our coffee puck at a certain pressure. And we reach the ideal, of course, when our extraction time lasts exactly as long as we wanted it to, and with a brew ratio that we also wanted. Because then we have a well-balanced, full-bodied, delicious espresso that is neither too sour nor too bitter. And we all know all too well that this unfortunately doesn't always work out. And the reasons for that are unfortunately very diverse. And we'll go into why that is in one of our next videos. And of course, we'd like to demonstrate the whole thing to you. And for that, we'll just take our own variety of beans because we know them exactly, of course. And for this bean variety, I'll use the following recipe. That means I'm taking 18 grams for a double espresso. I want to extract for 25 seconds. And as a result, I want to have 36 grams in the cup within those 25 seconds. And we'll try that out right now. It's very important to note that this is, of course, my personal recipe for this coffee. If you want to try it out, you might end up with a completely different extraction time and a completely different brew ratio. And how you find your very own personal and individual recipe is one of the main components of our barista courses. You have to learn how to taste. It's no different than with wine. And you have to find out for yourself when the bean variety you've bought, whether it's this one or another, tastes best to you personally, when it's most delicious for you. And unfortunately, that's not quite so simple, but we teach you that in our courses. But even if we know our ideal recipe, as I said, it won't always be easy to achieve exactly that. And that brings us to our question for today. What actually happens in the espresso if we perhaps haven't reached our time quite perfectly? Or what happens in our espresso if the brew ratio isn't exactly as we wanted it to be? And that in turn leads to the question from the beginning. Which machine is a better fit for me? Maybe one that works time-controlled or one that works volumetrically controlled. Explained again very briefly. Volumetrics simply means that we can program our machine so that a very specific amount of water always runs through our espresso. That means we always achieve the same amount in our cup that we programmed beforehand. And this can happen either through volumetric control inside the machine or through a scale, which might be connected to the machine via Bluetooth and then automatically switches it off once the target amount in the cup is reached. Time control, on the other hand, is quite simple. That means I program it, please run for 20, 25 or 30 seconds after starting, and then it switches off automatically. One thing first though, everything we're about to discuss applies exclusively to machines as they are commonly available on the market. That means machines where you turn the pump on and off and then the extraction is over. For machines that can operate with pressure and flow profile control, everything we're discussing now definitely doesn't apply. Because then completely different rules apply, and maybe we'll make another video about that. And to be able to demonstrate this to you now, we've picked out a very simple dual circuit machine. Or rather, it's not quite that simple. This is our stone, which we have modified. If you've seen our films, you might know that we've been dealing very, very intensively with pressure and flow profile control lately. And in our stone, as you can see here, we've now installed a control system from Gajimate. That means we're able to generate a pressure and flow profile with the machine. But as I said, we're not doing that right now. That means we turn the machine on and it turns itself off automatically after our pre-programmed time. Basically, we're distinguishing between two things here. First, the extraction time, which we clearly define, and second, the brew ratio, which we also clearly define. Now, what does what? The extraction time, meaning how long water runs through our coffee under pressure, determines the balance between acids and bitters. This means that with the extraction time, I incorporate the acids and/or the bitter substances exactly as I personally want them for my own taste. In contrast, the brew ratio actually has very little to almost no influence on the balance between acids and bitters, but instead mainly affects the aromas. That means the brew ratio is what determines which particular flavor I am able to extract from my espresso. On the other hand, the brew ratio also determines how intense my coffee is, how much body it has, how much creaminess it has, but above all, which aromas I get out of it. Let's pick up our example from before again. That means I want to have exactly 36 grams in the cup from our coffee after 25 seconds. Let's see if that works, and above all, let's see how it tastes. Sorry, first I have to weigh the beans, of course. Namely, we're taking 18 grams in 25 seconds extraction time. And we hope that we've set our grinder so that we have 36 grams in the cup, just as we intended. So once again, we want to make sure everything is properly set up. With the Gajimate, we can now really work however we want. That means we can either say we want to reach so many grams or we want to work time controlled. So now we have our 18 grams here again. Now we're going to prepare them nicely, of course. From this position, it's unfortunately always a bit difficult to tamp, but I think I can manage that. There we go. So, and now we start and see what comes out after 25 seconds. Oh. I'm afraid this won't work at all. The pressure is so high. We have 9 bar now, but it's already been 22 seconds. But only 6.2 grams is enough, so that went completely wrong. Let's just try the whole thing again. But I'll do the following. I'll taste it. This isn't even a ristretto yet. Not even half a ristretto. Totally interesting. That's what I was saying earlier. When we've reached a different brewing ratio after our personally perfect extraction time, then suddenly completely different aromas come out of the espresso. It's now neither too sour nor too bitter. It just tastes completely different. And the whole thing gets interesting if I were to add milk to it now, but we want to do it right. And now let's try again to adjust our grinder. That tastes really delicious. Some real deep, dark, and bitter chocolate notes. Well, it's very intense, I must say. It is very intense. So that means we'll adjust our grinder a bit. Maybe not quite perfect, we'll have to see. And now we'll take our 18 grams again in... Afterwards, there's this beautiful dark note Well, I mean, especially in the finish, you really notice a beautiful, dark, bitter chocolate flavor that comes through. But it's not actually all that bitter. It's more like the kind of chocolate that's rich and deep, with just a hint of bitterness that lingers pleasantly rather than being harsh. Fantastic. If I were to put that over vanilla ice cream, for example, that could be highly interesting. So, let's try it again, though. I really shouldn't have dumped that out. I don't have any new cups here, unfortunately, but I did rinse them. And now I'm very curious to see what comes out now. So. And then we'll try the whole thing again via volumetric control. That means in the second round, what we really want to do is to try to carefully reach exactly the 36 grams that we actually wanted to have. We are aiming for that precise amount. Well, you know, it actually looks a bit better already, I have to say, but even so, it still seems like we might have just a bit too little in the cup at this point. Let's take another look and see what happens next, just to be sure. We've already gone past the ristretto. $38.9 grams, so actually a touch too much. I didn't want to have that much, but we're going to try it anyway. And the interesting thing is, now we have the same ratio between acids and bitter substances as I just had with this extreme coffee. Super balanced. That's exactly how I actually want it. I would have liked it a bit denser, but now it tastes completely different. It no longer has that deep dark chocolate note that I just had. And as I said, if I drink these 6 grams that I achieved before pure like this, it's a bit harsh. You have to be a bit trained to like that. But other flavors just come out. And now let's just take a look. I'll adjust the grinder a bit finer, just a touch more precise, because I want to show you now what happens if I might need a little bit longer for the extraction process, but still end up with roughly the same volume as I just had. Then I'm going to switch our machine over to volumetrics for a moment, just briefly, so you can see how that works. So I can do that here via my profiles and set my profile so that I am now working with volumetric control, specifically via the scale. That means we're integrating the Bluetooth scale, and the Bluetooth scale stops the machine automatically once we've reached our 37 grams. Now I'll pour this away. It's actually a real shame, because that was actually very, very exciting. I'm going to carefully adjust our grinder just a little bit finer than before so that we can achieve a slightly longer extraction time now in order to test and see how it affects the taste. So let's see what happens. Let's dry that off. And now I'll do the same thing, cleaning it again. And that means I'm going to carefully weigh out, once again, 18 grams of coffee beans, just like before. And see how the espresso tastes then. A little bit too much. At this point, we have 18.0, which means we have exactly 18. So now we have the same amount of beans as before. Slightly finer grind to achieve a different effect. We want As I said, it's a little difficult here, but I think it's working. So that's going out. Unfortunately, I don't have any second cups here, so I'll have to use these again, but I don't think that's a problem now. So the extraction is running. I can watch it nicely on the iPad here. Oh, I can hear it already. It looks like it. Ah, the first drops are coming. Okay. "18 seconds and only 10 grams in. 22, 23, 24, 25. That would have been our end before. But we're running a little bit longer. And that is... Now we've reached our total of 37 grams. Exactly 37 grams. And that's after a full 31 seconds. So that means we've actually run for 6 seconds longer than planned. We've had a 6-second longer extraction time. And now let's just try and see what happens. Whoa. Yeah, that's not for me. This one tastes really bitter now. We've reached the same brew ratio, but I have a completely different balance between the acids and bitter substances. That's something I don't like. I don't like the taste at all. But that's exactly what I wanted to show you. That's the difference between time control and the brew ratio. Once I've found my time for my espresso, I stick with it, no matter what brew ratio I want to achieve, because that's the exciting part. I can experiment with it. The balance between bitter substances and acids remains almost the same. Of course, it's possible that if I pull a ristretto now, it might taste a touch more acidic or a touch more bitter. That means I extend or shorten the extraction time by maybe a second. That will probably be enough to get exactly the same balance. And especially when I drink milk drinks, it becomes incredibly interesting to say, okay, I want my cappuccino to taste completely different. Earlier, with the 6.2 grams, I had an incredibly chocolatey taste, and I achieved that, of course, in my cappuccino, flat white or whatever. Our coffee is currently more of a classic Italian variety, but we're in the process of developing a second one, a fruity variety. And of course, we've tried it with that one too, and we're achieving exactly the same results. The time balances it, while the brewing ratio changes the flavor. So for me personally, it's much, much more important to hit the exact time than the exact amount, meaning the exact brewing ratio. Of course, you're welcome to see it differently, and so I'd be very curious to hear how you feel about all of this. What experiences have you had? Please just let us know in the comments, because I'm really curious to see if you have a different perspective on things. Because with espresso, it's always a bit like this. There is no absolute truth. Everyone has their own taste, everyone has a different feeling, and therefore everyone can judge it differently for themselves. How you come to judge your own espresso, how you do it all, what adjustments there are, you'll learn that, as I said, in our barista courses, or you already know it anyway. But at the very end, a quick reminder, I didn't work with pressure and flow profile control, which I could do now with our modified stone. I've worked quite normally now, just like 99% of all machines available on the market do. That means you turn it on and you turn it off again. And with that, I'm coming to the end. If you liked our post, we'd of course be happy about every like, but we're also happy about any discussion you might have with each other here. We also always try to answer questions, but of course, we're even more pleased about every new subscriber, because that's how you support us in our work to be able to produce these and other films for you. I thank you for watching, and I wish you, until next time, enjoy a delicious coffee. Thank you very much, and see you soon.